Welcome. When I was preparing for this presentation, I started doing a little research about the foundation, and I came across the mission statement, which it just stuck me. It just stuck with me. And the mission of the Spartan Foundation is to invest in student athletes today, which would help develop complete champions and leaders for tomorrow, all with the purpose to further God's kingdom. So today I want to talk about the people who invested in me, and there was a lot of them. But I'd like to take you back to the beginning and explain to you where this whole journey started. Like they said, I grew up in Los Angeles, California, and I started playing sports when I was 5 years old. I played baseball, basketball, football, and I also ran track. But the most amazing thing, looking back at it this time, I didn't realize that all the coaches were volunteer coaches. People who had their own families, their own jobs, but still took time to invest in the kids in the neighborhood. And that was going to make a major, major impact on me in the future. Because for me, sports was my motivation. I remember my mom always telling me if I applied myself in school like I did in sports, that I'll be able to achieve a lot of things. School was a struggle for me. I had tutors from the time I was in elementary all the way to university. I knew that was going to be my path, and I was okay with it. Now, when I was about in 7th grade, my parents separated. And this really changed the dynamic of our household because my mom was the one who stayed home and raised us. And my dad is, of course, the one that went out there and worked. But now my dad was no longer around. And my mom had to do both duties. And this is when the mentors started to play a major role in my life. Big Bob Bajorquez, the man you see in the middle, is the person who ran the local park. I had him, other coaches, my mother, and of course teachers who were now being mentors to me, people that were there for me all the time when I needed them. But it didn't stop there at that age. Even when I got into high school, I continued to play sports, playing baseball, basketball, and football. And I remember my high school coach taking me and a few of the players to the University of USC. We walked around the campus, we sat in on one of the practices, and my coach said, listen, if you apply yourself, you'll get a chance to get a Division I football scholarship. But my grades were just not good enough. So I had to go to a local junior college. I was there for 2 years. It was called Mount San Antonio Junior College. Had a great time. Was able to get on the football field and play a little bit. And after my 2 years there at the junior college, I was able to finally get a Division I football scholarship. Now, I had 3 offers when I came out of junior college. One was to Southern Illinois, the other one was to Louisiana Tech, and the third one, of course, was Utah State. Now, I chose Utah State for one main reason. We grew up with no money. We didn't travel, we didn't go anywhere. And it was important for me that my family got a chance to see me play. So with Utah being a lot closer to California, I decided to go to Utah State. And this was a great experience for me because, again, I got a chance to play football. We actually won a championship and won the first bowl victory in the school's history, and that was the Las Vegas Bowl II victory. Another person that changed my life was your guest speaker from last year, Jim Zorn. Jim Zorn was actually my college quarterback coach. He not only taught me how to be a football player, but he also taught me how to be a good father. He invited me and a few other quarterbacks to his house, and I would see his interaction with his family. I would see the love, the hugs, the praying at the table, and that really stood out for me because that's something I did not have, and I was always going to remember that. But on the football side, I actually thought my football career was over. All I knew about was the National Football League. And I knew the National Football League was not looking for a 6'2", 185-pound Mexican quarterback. It just was not going to happen. But I was okay with it because my plan was to go back and coach and teach in the neighborhood where I grew up. Those volunteer coaches that invested in me, I felt that it was my duty to go back and invest in the neighborhood where I grew up. But I started hearing about this opportunity, this league up in Canada. So I inquired, and to my surprise, the CFL actually expanded into the U.S. In 1993, they had one team in Sacramento called the Sacramento Gold Miners. 1994, the year that I came out, they added 3 new teams, the Baltimore Stallions, the Shreveport Pirates, and of course, the Las Vegas Posse. And this is where I got my foot in the door, a chance to finally play some professional football, and I was really looking forward to it. So our daily routine, if you can imagine this, is we lived on the Las Vegas Strip for 5 weeks. We lived at the Riviera Hotel, and this is where our football camp was held. So my daily routine was we would get up in the morning, walk to the casino, go have breakfast in the buffet line. After breakfast, back to the casino to a parking lot, and we would travel about 30 minutes to Sam Boyd Stadium, and we'd have our first practice. We would travel back, shower up, and of course, go have lunch in the buffet line again. Our second practice would be in the parking lot of the Riviera Hotel. So picture a parking lot, concrete, light post, and what they did is they just put grass right on the concrete, and it wasn't even a regular sized field. It was like an L-shaped field because we had to work our way around the light post. But this was supposed to be normal, right? It was my first experience of playing professional football, so I did not question anything at all. The one thing I did question, though, was my confidence. Now, I came from a small Division I football program. I was now competing with 12 other quarterbacks from the bigger universities, guys who I used to watch play on TV on Saturday afternoons. And I thought to myself, how am I going to compete with these guys? Well, after that first day of practice, I saw what they were capable of doing. I knew deep in my heart what I was capable of doing. And I said, never again am I going to question my confidence. So after competing with these guys for 5 weeks, I became the starter. Now, my goal was just to make this football team. But here I was, 21 years old, playing professional football and starting. Now, it was a great experience. We went 5-13 that year. I was still very inconsistent and got hurt quite often, but it gave me an opportunity to get my foot in the door. But after that 1 year in 1994, the team folds, and I had to move on. Now, I've had to deal with adversity on and off the field my entire life. But what I was going to have to deal with in the next 3 years, it was going to push me over the edge. Now, I got picked up by Hamilton, and the first 2 years that I was there, 1995 and 1996, I really wasted a great opportunity to be mentored. I had guys like Mike Kerrigan, Steve Taylor, and Matt Dunnigan. But when I was playing with these guys, I didn't want to listen to them. I thought I had all the answers, and it was a big mistake. And what's crazy, finally, my third year there in 1997, the team says, you know what, Anthony, we believe in you. We're going to get rid of all these veterans, and you're going to be our starter. And what happens? We go 2-16. And I didn't even win those 2 games. I was on the bench. So I didn't win any games that year. So you're talking about adversity smacking me in the face? That's exactly what was going on here. And I didn't know how to handle it. I remember all I wanted to do was just go from my apartment straight to the stadium, and that was it. So what happens after this time? I get released. I had 2 teams that were actually interested in me. One was the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and the other one was the Montreal Alouettes. And we all know which team I chose. It was, of course, it was the Montreal Alouettes. But the reason why I wanted to go there, because I wanted to be part of a winning organization. And Montreal had that. When I was in Hamilton and Las Vegas, we were a losing organization. I was looking forward to the new opportunities and new challenges. But the first thing I knew I had to do is I had to gain the trust of the locker room. To me, this is the most important thing as a quarterback, to have that trust of the locker room. Because once you have that trust, that's when magic could happen. But first, I had to learn how to accomplish that. And I was able to do that because of this man, Tracy Ham. In this picture, he's outflanked with my 2 brothers, David and Mario. Tracy was an amazing individual. I noticed right away when I got in the locker room the respect that the guys had for him. Guys would come up to him, not only ask him football questions, but ask him personal questions. And that always stood out to me. So wherever Tracy went, I went. Tracy would show up 3 hours before every practice. He would watch film. He would lift weights. He would take care of his body. And I just went with him wherever he went because I wanted to learn. My first year there in 1998, I started 6 games because Tracy was hurt a bit. I was 4-2 as a starter. So again, I was starting to gain the trust of that locker room. 1999 comes around. I'm 7-2 as a starter. So now, not only am I getting the trust of the locker room, I'm getting the trust of the organization. And what's unique about the Canadian Football League? We have certain rules. And one of the rules is you're only allowed to practice and meet for 4.5 hours. Well, Tracy taught me that that's just not good enough. You have to be, in order to be a champion, you got to put in extra time. So my daily routine when I was playing is I would get up at 5 o'clock every morning. I will be in the film room by 5:30. So from 5:30 to 7:30, I'm breaking down my opponent to make sure that I am not surprised when game day comes around. From 7:30 to 8, I take a little break. And of course, from 8 to 9, we would have our quarterback meeting. In this meeting, we would go over every single play that we were going to run that day. Finally, practice officially started at 9 o'clock. So from 9 to 1:30, we would have our normal team meeting and, of course, our practice. And that was my daily routine when I was playing. So I really felt that I was taking the necessary steps to get on top, to be a consistent championship quarterback. So in the year 2000, Tracy Ham retired, and I took the team over. And this was a crucial year for me. The last time I took a team over, we went 2-16, and I didn't win those 2 games. So here, we go all the way to the Grey Cup in the year 2000. We go 12-6 in the regular season. It was a great, great learning experience for me. But that's not the only thing that happened in the year 2000. In the year 2000, that's when I started to commit myself to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Up to this point, I knew about Christ. I had very good friends who were Christians. They would invite me to church. I would listen half the time. Other time, I would not listen. But in the year 2000, I had a very good friend of mine whose wife just passed away. And I remember being there thinking to myself, I have to get my act together. I have to commit. So I asked my friends, what do I have to do? They said, all you have to do is ask God to come into your heart, tell him that you're a sinner, and you want to change your life. So that's exactly what I did. So that's when my journey started to begin as a Christian. And through Bible studies and reading the Bible, and of course also being baptized, I was able to grow. And I remember early on when I first became a Christian, I really didn't know what to pray for. I was being very generic on the certain things that I wanted. But after speaking to other fellow Christians, they're like, no, God wants you to be specific in what you want in life. He's not going to give you everything that you want. He'll give you things that he thinks is necessary. So there were certain things I prayed for. One thing I prayed for was, of course, to be a consistent and a championship quarterback. So in the year 2002, I was able to accomplish that. Now, in 2002, this is where the course of my career changed. Don Matthews became our head coach that year. And I was very nervous when he got hired because I wasn't sure if he was going to release me or trade me. But when we sat down in our first meeting, he says, Anthony, he goes, we're going to bring in the talent, we're going to bring in the coaches, and you are going to go out there and lead us. We're going to change this entire system. And that just changed my whole attitude. And I believe that to really set the tone for our 2002 season. So the question I had for myself at this point, so now what? Should I follow the same routine? It took me 9 years to be a consistent championship quarterback. So I thought to myself, why do I have to change? Everything should be status quo. Well, it was the biggest mistake of my career because what happens after that? We lose the Grey Cup in 2003, 2005, 2006, and of course 2008. Now we had great teams. I was actually MVP in 2003 and 2008, but we kept on coming up short. So you talk about adversity smacking you in the face all over again, that's exactly what was going on here. But the difference is I was not going to give up on myself. I truly felt in my heart that I could eventually get the job done, but I knew I had to make a change. Because up to this point, I did everything on my own training, I created my own nutrition, and I just came to the conclusion that it just was not good enough. So I had to go out there and hire a team that was going to push me to become a champion once again. Now, this is my team. They didn't look like this when I hired them, but this is their Movember mustache from a couple years ago. The guy in the middle with the very large chopped mustache, a guy named Scott Suter. He's a very good friend of mine and a guy that I refer to as my career extender. He was the reason why I was able to play for so many years. And when I sat down with him, he's like, listen, we're going to do 3 things. He goes, 1, I'm going to push you harder than you've ever been pushed before so you could be in the best shape possible. 2, you're going to have to go see a sports psychologist. And 3, we're going to see what you're eating. We're going to check your nutrition. So for 7 days, I did a food journal. This is actually day 5 of 7 during that time. And as you can see, I put a lot of good stuff into my system. Bagels, Lucky Charms for breakfast. But the one thing I do miss is the Rocky Road ice cream. I used to love that stuff. But after that, he had me do blood tests, saliva tests, a bunch of different tests. And basically the results came back that my body had a hard time breaking down 3 items. One was all dairy products, all refined sugar, and all gluten, wheat products. So we eliminated that from my system. And the energy that I felt after that and my ability to recover after workouts and games was at its all-time high. So I really felt that I was now being more accountable to my teammates. Because to me as a leader, that's what you need to be, is be accountable. I wanted to show them that I was doing something to get us over this hump so we could get back on track. So I really felt that I was making the right changes. I was being pushed very hard in the weight room and outside in the training. I started to work out a lot harder, changed up my diet, and I was really looking forward as we move forward. So in the year 2009, we're 15-3 at the end of the regular season. It's one of the best teams I ever played on. So what's great about the CFL, when you win your division, you get a week off. Well, of course, in the past, I would not work out. I would enjoy my Rocky Road ice cream and just waiting to see who we're going to play. But this year, that was not the case. I trained very hard during our bye week to make sure that we gave ourselves a chance to win another championship. So we were able to finally accomplish that there in 2009. Now, I do apologize to the Saskatchewan fans in the room. I know it comes up quite often, but this game, we're all going to remember what happened. The one thing I like to remind people is the fact that we were down by 16 points with 8 minutes to go. We were able to get our team in field goal range with like 2 seconds left, and I'm going to remember it to this day. Being on the sideline, holding hands with my teammates, being down on one knee, and saying, God, whatever happens, happens. And of course, you see the snap, the hold, and the kick, and it's no good. And you talk about your life flashing right in front of you, that's exactly happened to me, because I thought to myself, you had to be kidding me, not another Grey Cup loss. But of course, you all know what happened. Too many men. We get a second chance. I get back on my knees, holding hands with my teammates, praying, God, whatever happens, happens. And of course, we all know the end result. So we really fought hard to get back into that game and definitely win. So the question I have for myself now, again, so now what? Should I follow the same routine? Well, I wasn't going to make the same mistake that I made back in 2002, because now I realize that once you become a champion, you have all these other organizations, these other coaches, these are the players who are trying to get to that ultimate goal, and that's, of course, to win another championship. So I started gearing up right away going into the 2010 season. Usually, I always take the month of December off to take a mental and physical break away from the game. But going into the 2010 season, I said no. In order to challenge myself, I have to go out there and do something different. So in 2010, here we are midway through the regular season. I end up going down with an injury. They send me to the doctor, and they do a scan of my chest, and they determined that I actually fractured my first rib, and I bruised 2 other ribs. But during the scan, they also found this little nodule on my neck, this little bump. So they do a biopsy of this lump in my throat, and about a week later, the results come back inconclusive. I'm like, what does that mean? They're like, well, we're not sure if you have cancer or not. Now, this was not the first time that I heard the word cancer. Back in 2007, my wife was diagnosed with large B-cell lymphoma. So imagine, it's October. We have 3 games left in the regular season. My wife just gave birth to our second daughter. And a week later, we're back in the hospital. My wife is having some problems breathing. So they do a chest x-ray. And then I remember to this day being in the hospital, and they said, we apologize, but we found a large mass in your chest. We want to admit you to oncology to do more tests. Now, the first thing that we did is we got down on our knees, and we started praying to God about wisdom, guidance, and strength on how we were going to deal with this. And the second thing I did was I actually got on the telephone. I called the Alouettes, explained to them the situation, told them there's no way that I'm going to be able to concentrate and play football with these next 3 games. So with the blessing of the organization, I was able to step away from football to be by my wife's side as she was going to battle for her life going through cancer. So my wife went through radiation therapy, chemotherapy, and I'm very proud to say that she is doing well and healthy today. But her experience was definitely going to help me on what I was going to have to deal with in 2010. So we come back to 2010. The biopsy just came back inconclusive. So I said, okay, what's the next step? They're like, well, you have to have surgery to remove half of your thyroid to determine whether you have cancer or not. I said, okay, let's do it tomorrow. They're like, no, the standard procedure is to wait 6 months. So after discussing it with my family and the doctors, we decided to do it after the 2010 season. This was a very emotional time for me because I was trying to win another championship, but at the same time, I was trying to deal with this upcoming surgery. And the thing was, not too many people knew about the problem that I was dealing with. I kept it a secret because I didn't want our football team to be distracted. So through mental toughness and a lot of praying, I was able to overcome it and, of course, lead our team to another championship. And this was fantastic because after losing so many, we got a chance to win back-to-back championships. And I remember after the game, a reporter coming up to me, and he asked me, what does your future hold? Because he wanted to know if I was going to retire after this season. But I knew exactly what my future held, and that was this upcoming surgery. And that's when it all came out. This is when I informed the public that I had this upcoming surgery coming up. I have this thyroid issue. So after winning the Grey Cup in 2010, 2 weeks later, I go in for my surgery. So I go in, I have my first surgery. They go in, remove half of my thyroid. About a week later, the results come back, and they're like, listen, we apologize, but we found cancer. So I had to go back for a second surgery to remove the other part of my thyroid, and they also cleaned everything else up in my neck. Now, I didn't have to have any chemotherapy, no radiation therapy. All I had to do was take this little pill. It was called radioactive iodine. I had to be isolated in the hospital for 1 week, and that was it. And I wasn't going to let this slow me down. I wanted to get back on the football field to try to earn another championship. So I got ready in 2011 to get ready for another year. Now, in 2011, we did not win the Grey Cup. We lost in the playoffs. But we were able to set some records, personal records and team records, but nothing compares to winning a championship. So in 2012, of course, we lose in the playoffs again. And then last year in 2013, I ended up going down with an injury. Now, I know concussions are a very hot topic, and I was just bombarded with information about concussions. But the one thing that scared me the most was the fact that my tolerance to take a hit went down. And the hit that took me out was not a very big hit. So I said, you know what? Enough's enough. It's time for me to move on and close this chapter of 20 years of playing professional football. And that's exactly what I did. And people always ask me, what are you always going to remember? And they always talk about the yardage, 79,816 yards. I said, no, that's the stuff I'm not going to remember because records are meant to be broken. It's the memories that you shared with your teammates, your coaches, and the great city of Montreal. Being on a float, going down St. Catherine and celebrating a championship. Those are the things I'm always going to remember. So there was a few things I wanted to accomplish when I retired, and one was, of course, to finally finish my degree. I never graduated from Utah State when I left. So when I retired, I inquired about my credits. And they told me, listen, all you need is 16 credits to get a general studies bachelor's degree. So I went back to school. I did courses online. I was actually an intern with the Alouettes this past winter that gave me credit for school. And then finally in May, I was able to go back to Utah State and graduate. Now, this is one of the most proudest moments of my life because I was able to take my wife and my 2 kids back and have them share in this experience. And that was definitely fantastic. For me, it's all about family. My family has sacrificed so much so I could have a lot of success on the football field. And without them, there's no way that I was able to accomplish anything. And it was definitely a great, great run. Now, in closing, there was a lot of people who invested in me. And they taught me a lot. And I'm very proud of the man I am because of that. Not what I accomplished on the football field, but what I've accomplished outside of football. Being able to go back, giving back to the community, doing something that's going to touch other lives. To me, that's more important than anything else, and that's exactly what you guys are doing here. And the last thing I want to leave you with is this, is I don't get too many opportunities to talk about my faith, but every time I won the Grey Cup championship and the 3 times I won MVP, the first things that came out of my mouth when they stuck a microphone in front of me was, I give all glory and praise to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, because without him, none of this would be possible. So thank you for coming out. I hope you guys had a good time, and thanks for having me. Thank you.